Welcome back to the deep dive. So, you might think the final test of an Ashes series, with the result already decided. It's just a formality.
Just going through the motions.
Exactly. But from what we've seen in the sources for day one at the Sydney Cricket Ground, this match, it quickly became something else entirely.
It did. It turned into this fascinating case study of strategic gambles and, well, pure resilience under pressure.
And we're not just here to give you a play-by-play. Our mission is to cut through all the commentary, the analyst notes, and just deliver the key insights.
Right. We want to help you understand why this day one matters so much and how one really controversial decision sort of defined the entire match right from the start.
And what it might mean for Australian cricket going forward.
That's it. For you, the listener, we're unpacking the big stuff, the tactical choices from Australia, which, believe me, we will get to, have caused a bit of a firestorm.
But on the other side, day one also gave us this real moment of maturity from one of England's most exciting young players. So this deep dive is all about the why.
Why those 45 overs were so important.
Okay, let's unpack this. The starting point has to be the scoreboard and, frankly, the chaos from the weather. England finished day one on 2-11 for 3.
Which is a very strong position.
A very strong position, but that number comes from only 45 overs of play. It was just a day of stops and starts, stops and starts.
Yeah, England won the toss, chose to bat. Pretty standard stuff at the SCG. But they only got to that total because the day was cut so short by, well, two things. Rain, and then, pretty controversially, bad light.
Which ended play before they were even scheduled to take tea.
Exactly.
And 45 overs. That's barely half a day's cricket. It's a classic Sydney Test frustration, isn't it?
Oh, it is. That late afternoon weather, the clouds roll in, and it just robs the match of crucial time.
And that lost time is where the first bit of real conflict came in.
It is. Our sources pointed to a lot of former Australian players and commentators who were publicly questioning the umpire's call to stop play early.
They thought there was enough light to continue.
That was the feeling, yeah. The sentiment was that there was plenty of natural light left, maybe for another hour of play. And they just called it.
And it wasn't just a mild disagreement, was it? The sources paint a picture of real frustration.
Definitely. A sense that the officials were maybe a bit too quick to head indoors, especially when the crowd was desperate for more cricket.
When you think about the momentum a bowling side needs, every single ball not bowled just feels like a failure.
It does. For Australia, who really needed wickets, those logged overs meant they couldn't press any advantage they might have been building. It just magnified all their other problems from the day.
So that sets the scene then. A fragmented day, frustrating, but also defined by some serious resistance.
That's right.
So let's shift to that turning point. Because despite all the disruptions, England found themselves in a bit of trouble at 57 for 3.
They did. And what saved them was this crucial, unbeaten 154-run partnership between Joe Root and Harry Brook.
Let's start with Root. 72 not out.
He was just classic Joe Root. He played the senior role perfectly. Yeah. Anchored the whole innings. His technique was just so solid, rotating the strike, putting the bad balls away.
He basically neutralized Australia's main weapon, which is their pace attack hunting as a pack.
He did. But Root's brilliance is almost expected at this point, isn't it?
It is, and that's where it gets really interesting, with Harry Brook on 78 not out. Because the narrative around him this series has been, well, a bit different.
It has. He's faced a lot of criticism, and often for good reason, for being, a bit too aggressive. A bit reckless for Test cricket.
He sacrifices control for flair sometimes.
Exactly. But the sources we looked at, they all highlighted day one as this huge shift in his maturity as a Test player.
How so?
He just showed so much more patience. Instead of chasing every ball, trying to hit boundaries, he tempered that aggression. He left the ball well. He waited for the right delivery to drive.
It's that difference between trying to dominate and just trying to control the tempo, right?
That's it perfectly. And the analyst's data backs it up. His strike rate was still high, around 70, but the number of false shots, those risky plays away from his body, that dropped way down.
He was neutralizing the threat instead of just trying to survive it.
And to do that against an all-seam attack on a flat SCG pitch, that speaks volumes. Once that new ball got a bit softer, there was nothing in it for the bowlers.
And Root and Brook just understood that. They knew there were no demons in the pitch, and they just had to be patient.
That kind of resilience, that willingness to just bat for time, That's what England's middle order had been missing.
But that whole partnership was made possible, or at least a lot easier, by the one thing that was missing from the Australian attack.
Variation.
Variation. And this brings us to the tactical shockwave that has just dominated all the analysis.
The big one. Australia's selection decision. They went into this match with an all-seam bowling attack, no specialist spinner.
Okay, we have to pause here because to understand how big of a deal this is, you have to understand the SCG.
The SCG is, for all intents and purposes, the home of Australian spin bowling. It's legendary for it.
The pitch is there. They start flat for the batters, but by day 3, 4, 5.
They crack up. They offer huge turn, variable bounce. Nathan Lyon has built a Hall of Fame career exploiting those exact conditions on that exact ground.
So to leave out a spinner is to basically sacrifice your main weapon for the second half of the match.
And that's why this next statistic is just staggering. Our sources confirmed this was the first time since 1888. The first time Australia has played a test at the SCG without a frontline spinner. That's not just a statistic. That's like an institutional earthquake.
You're throwing out 136 years of history. That's not a gamble. That's a statement.
And it was a statement that drew immediate criticism. Former players, commentators, they almost universally condemned it as being tactically short-sighted.
The argument being about balance, I assume.
All about balance. Test cricket needs balance. Taking out spin completely unbalances your side. It turns a 5-day strategic contest into a one-trick sprint.
So why? What was the rationale? Why take such a massive risk?
Well, the thinking, according to our sources, was probably based on two things. The weather and bit of desperation.
The forecast.
Exactly. The forecast for the first couple of days was overcast and rainy. They likely gambled that the moisture would keep the pitch green, helping the seamers and making a spinner useless.
And they were just desperate for a win to close out the series.
So they loaded up on pace, hoping to just blow England away early, which of course didn't happen.
No, and the sources just dismantle that logic. The second the sun came out, the pitch went flat again. The seam attack had nothing to offer.
No variation. No different angle. No one targeting the footmarks that would have been developing for a spinner. If the seamers aren't getting wickets, you have no plan B.
And what about the long-term message that sends?
That was a huge point of criticism in the analyst reports. If Australia is sidelining spinners at the home of spin, what does that say to any young kid trying to learn the craft?
It suggests you're prioritizing a dodgy weather forecast over decades of proven strategy. It creates this huge tactical hole for the future.
It really does. Root and Brook, they just faced 4 fast bowlers bowling roughly the same way. Once the ball got old, the pressure just vanished.
If there had been a spinner, even just to hold up an end.
That partnership probably doesn't get to 150. The selection gamble, by the end of day 1, had just completely backfired.
A massive strategic miscalculation, and the scoreboard at 211 for 3 really tells the tale.
It does.
So, what does all this mean for day 2? Where do we go from here? England resumes in a fantastic position.
A commanding position. Root and Brook are set, the pitch is flat, they are perfectly set up to build a huge first innings total.
Which means Australia's challenge is
bordering on desperate. They have to get early wickets. They have to break this partnership within the first hour. If they don't,
England could be looking at 350, 400, and the match is pretty much gone for Australia.
They'd be playing for a draw at best.
So the key battles are pretty clear. First, you have England's set middle order against Australia's seam attack, which has to be getting tired already.
Right. Can they find something extra on a dead pitch, or are they just going to be run into the ground?
Then you've got the weather again. The forecast suggests more interruptions are possible.
Which just makes every run England scores in that first session even more valuable. If they can pile on another 100 quickly, the weather might just save them from any chance of a collapse later on.
And finally, that big debate, the spin question. Is this just a one-off mistake, or is this the start of a much bigger conversation about how Australia develops its spin talent?
Given how harsh the criticism has been, you have to think it's the latter. The selectors chose short-term tactics over long-term depth, and day 1 showed that gamble failed.
This has been a really fascinating deep dive into just one day of cricket. So let's recap the core takeaways for you, the listener.
First, we saw huge individual resilience from England, especially Harry Brook's coming-of-age innings.
Second, that monumental, tradition-shattering tactical gamble from Australia, the 1888 spin omission, which just did not pay off.
And finally, a reminder that external factors, like rain and bad light, can completely reshape the strategy of a test match.
Absolutely.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, It raises a really interesting question for you to think about in any context, really.
Hmm.
When is it justifiable to break with over a century of proven historical precedent?
Hmm.
When is that short-term risk of throwing out the rulebook actually worth it? And what are the hidden costs? Not just for the immediate task, but for your long-term talent pool, for the strategic depth of your whole organization. Day one at the SCG really forces you to confront that.